Howdy.
Yeah, howdy. Um, Welcome to episode one, and welcome
Mm.
back if you joined us in episode zero and listened to our small trailer.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for listening, joining in. Surprised anyone's listening to us ramble, but it's good. Um, just a trigger warning before we sort of kick off with this one. We're gonna sort of touch on the tsunami in the 2004 tsunami and sort of themes surrounding natural disasters. So if that affects you, yeah, you can hit pause now. We're going to leave some hotlines down in the description. So yeah, feel free to get some help if that affects you.
This is a bit of I guess, a tough topic to talk about. Um,
It is.
Mostly because it happened in 2004, and we were quite young, like we were kids. Um,
How old were we?
too too young. No, we were. How old are you?
8.
I'm nine
No,
years old.
no. You are 9. You're still 9. So
Um,
you weren't even born back then. 6. We were 6. We
yeah,
were
we were
6.
six.
Yeah. Yeah. Quick maths.
Six, probably, yeah, just passing on six, I think. And I think
Yeah.
we were at that age where we were old enough to remember what was going on,
Yeah.
and with all that was actually going on with the other stuff during that time, we do remember a few things,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Yeah.
a few more things clearly, I would say.
Yeah. It's
From the
kind
time.
of. Yeah, I think it's kind of like a 9/11 moment, right? I know in US it's a big thing where people just say, do you remember what you were doing when 9/11 happened, right? Like you could ask that in Sri Lanka, like everyone knows what they were doing, what was going on that day, that morning. And but thing is no one talks about it like they do in US where I think what 3,000 people maybe died, which is still huge. It's totally different thing, right? It's a terrorist attack. It's totally different. Takes a totally different toll on you psychologically. But this one was huge, where 250,000 people died, and heaps more was displaced and left homeless. So, yeah,
Yeah, so that, I guess, brings me to the question: do you remember what you were doing on the 26th of December, 2004?
yeah, I did obviously. I mean, it was a weird day because it was Boxing Day, Poya Day, right? So people who don't know what Poya is, that's so in Sri Lanka every full moon day of every month is a public holiday, right? It's a Buddhist celebration every month. So we have 12 holidays for Poya every year, right? But there was a full moon day, Boxing Day, so there was all this Christmas celebration still going on, and Buddhist celebrations. So everything's going on. And we're home, it's school holidays, so have the TV on, you know, just watching TV. And then, everyone gets up early in the morning because they used to play these cartoons and stuff around 9 or like 8, like really early. So everyone's up watching these. Oh, I've watched like Lord of the Rings like 50 times. Just the first movie as well. They just never played the second one. And then I think I don't think they were playing any of the movies because it was a Poya Day, so it's very religious as well. So they usually have religious sort of discourses and all that going on. So I think we were just watching that. And then I remember. Let's talk about what you remember, Dilla. What were you doing that morning?
Um, I was home, and as you said, I was. I don't think I was watching cartoons. I think there was probably a discourse going on because at the time
Mm.
my grandparents also lived with me, so they would watch something as well. Uh, my granddad especially would watch sports whenever I watched something like cartoons or something during the day as well. So like he would never let me hear the end of it if I managed to switch it between something. So obviously I must have let them take precedence and watch whatever they were watching. And another thing I need to say is that I had just got the news, I think the night before, that my aunt had gone into labor. So
Uh,
we were supposed to go to Gaul, I think Gaul or Martha, like a trip, with some of my dad's friends. It's like an annual thing, I guess. Christmas time, just go on a trip, and I think we had to cancel. It's not like we had to cancel like all the bookings or whatever. It's just like it wasn't gonna happen basically. So, um, we canceled. Just me, my mom, and my dad just didn't go on that day on Christmas. So like we were supposed to go on Christmas, and then that day we had got the call. Um, and I think we were getting ready to go to Kandy. Uh, so where she was staying, where my aunt was staying, because she was I think she was admitted to the hospital there, because she was staying with her husband, who is from Kandy, and yeah, and I think she was gonna be admitted, and we were gonna go visit her, and we had to cancel that trip. Basically, that's just short story.
Shout out to this auntie.
Yeah, yeah. Shout out to my cousin, I guess. For
Yeah.
yeah, the reason why it was unexpected was he was a premature baby.
Yep.
So I think he was originally due to come out in about 4 or 6 weeks, and the guy just decided to come out, and yeah, and then she got sick. I think it got pretty bad that like we were actually gonna go visit her, and
Yep.
yeah, so I was at home, probably like sulking that I wasn't going on a trip or whatever, but yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
doing, and I'm the TV was turned on, and I think around 11 a.m. to noon, some like special news report came up, and yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Wow. Yeah, but I think I got it. Sort of got the news a bit earlier. I didn't know what was going on. So I was watching one of those discourses, and I think it was a temple down near the ocean, right? One of the temples on one of those hills, and then there's this whole like wedding, like group just ran up to the temple in the middle of it, like screaming. They're like, "What's going on?" It's so odd, like a temple and this whole like bride just rocking up with like her white dress. They're like, "Oh, the ocean's flooding in." It's like so bizarre. Like no one's heard of this like ever, right? Like it's never come up in like tsunami. Like I haven't learned that word. Like I didn't know what that word meant until it happened, right? So no one knew what was going on. So like the news didn't pick it up till maybe half an hour later. So it was just bizarre to see this sort of wedding couple just rock up to a temple. So also it's not like a church where weddings happen at a temple. It's not a thing. It's not really a thing that happens. So it was very odd. But yeah.
Yeah, and then they showed live footage of it happening, right? And
Yeah. That was kind of crazy how big that was. Like I didn't understand sort of how huge that earthquake was, right? So it was apparently it's like 23,000 Hiroshima type atomic bombs, like the size of that. The energy of like 23,000 atomic bombs. It's crazy to think about. Sort of just knowing how much damage just one of them did, right? It's just huge. It's like 600 miles long, the rupture, right, along the ocean, and the seafloor is displaced by 10 yards, right? So it's trillions of just rock that moved, right? So much water that's just plummeting in, right? It was just bizarre and like crazy to see, but as a kid, it's like it's pretty cool though. As a kid, I was thinking like, wow, this is like pretty cool. Um, but obviously, it's only later you realize how sort of traumatic that event was.
Yeah. Um, and I feel like it was televised like extremely comprehensively, where like they just showed everything, and just like a few other things that we're gonna talk about. We just we just saw everything, and like it's like what I tell people, like you kind of don't forget stuff like that, and when you see that on TV live, and you think about it, you keep thinking about it, and then you're at home, you see that, and you have time to think about it because you're home from the holidays, right? And that's, you got nothing else to do except watch the TV, sit in front of the screen, and yeah, man, like that doesn't leave you. I think that sort of sense of dread, of I don't know, like an ability to do anything about it. Like you're like, and confusion, I guess. Like you don't know what's actually going on, but um, yeah, you don't forget stuff like that.
I think especially with the news in Sri Lanka, it's like they just would just show no censoring. Censoring isn't a thing. It doesn't exist. Especially with the war as well. They just show body parts. There was just every day you just see things, especially after the tsunami, and there was months of recovery effort and trying to identify bodies and all that, and the news would just show that no kind of you know trigger warning, like just straight up just show everything. um yeah, and some of these breaking stories would just go like around 5 or whatever, when the cartoons used to be on. So you're watching cartoons, all the kids in Lanka, they're watching it, and it comes on like pictures of bodies. Which the thing is, it's not like you don't realize it, or you just don't care about it at the time, because it's normal. Every kid's sort of gone through it. It's probably when you come maybe to Australia or some place like that, where you see the contrast, like no one can kind of relate to that. That's when it kind of hits you, I think.
Like I know we mentioned that we were kids talking about it, but like again, like Duma said, when we were discussing about it originally, like on what to talk about, he did mention that he felt kind of underqualified to talk about it because like neither of us, we were both from we were in Colombo at the time, right? We were both living in Colombo, like outskirts or like whatever, but like in the city where like it wasn't, we weren't affected too much by it. Um, so it's almost like you feel underqualified to talk about something like that. But
Yeah, I think that's what I think we were like pointing to in our first, I guess, episode 0, about sort of secondhand trauma, right? It just no one really got, like, both of us, I don't think we got personally affected by it in terms of like physically, like we didn't know anyone that was close to us that was affected. But there was this sort of national trauma, and the thing is, there was already national trauma going on because of the war, but this was this added thing on top, and I don't think most people had the capacity to take this thing on, right? It was already just that quota of trauma was already filled up, and this new sort of thing that came up. Um, and as kids, you're like, it's kind of like, yeah, this secondhand smoking experience. It's just the TV, just, and like everything around you, how people act, how people react, all of that kind of sort of rubs off on you slowly. And it's only when you sort of change environments, you come to a place where it's kind of peaceful, and then you realize, oh wow, like this is not normal.
yeah, man, like um, it's like you're watching people getting swept away with water, right? Like the water is literally, it's in the city area. Like yeah, they were showing footage of Gaul, um, and you're literally watching people holding on to these pieces of driftwood and I don't know, piece of metal just floating around the city, and then just you're just like just looking at it through the TV, and then through news programs, and like complete repetition throughout the whole week, the whole month, and then every December they show that. And like, it's like you're not allowed to forget about it, and rightly so, you shouldn't. But like, it's something that's gonna be there in the minds of our generation, our parents' generation, throughout like the rest of history, and then people are gonna be talking about it for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah, especially with that, like, yeah, just how powerful that water was. People were just, oh, it was like, it's like when you know, like ants, and you're like having a shower or something, and you're like, the ants just like float away, like they have no chance. It's kind of like that, and just the sort of dignity of people as well. Like, this is women, everyone just like, the water's so powerful, like the clothes are just ripped off them, right? And like they're just trying to survive, and like I don't know, one where like there's this whole family on top of like a coconut tree or
Yeah.
something. And
So like
like,
I mentioned, like we mentioned, we didn't know anyone directly affected by it, but I think some of the people who we were gonna go on the trip with, like the trip I mentioned earlier about going to the southern area, where it's not even like the southern south, like it's not like completely southern, because it was more like that area of Gaul, that this village out on the outskirts of Gaul, which was affected the
mm-hmm,
most by it. Um, but basically, I only found this out like when I was older, like when I was like 12, 13, when I met the dude, like met one of the dudes that I think we were supposed to go with, and basically he's a good friend of my father's, and like through the years it's become um like someone I know as well. So what happened was he had climbed on to the coconut tree with his family, and during the first wave, right? Or like I think it was a coconut tree. It was some tree of some sort, and because of like something that happened during the first wave, because it was just flooding everywhere, they jump up to get into clearance, and I think he hurt his leg. He either broke his leg or it was like just crushed off something. So he was there, like his leg dangling up, and then crying for help, and then the first wave like just receded a bit, right? And then people like everywhere, in the other trees and all, they climb down, and they're looking like at the like either like looking for their friends, their family, and then just looking through the rubble. And then this guy couldn't get down. He was stuck because of his leg. Like he was like crying for help, um, and then the second wave comes, right? And then all those people just on the on the beach, and like on the ground basically, and he's on the tree. All of them got swept away, and he's just there,
yeah,
just that one person over there. Um, and that's crazy. That was crazy to hear. And like,
wow,
and now
that's a crazy story.
and he's like walking with a limp because of that. And like, yeah, that's just that's crazy.
Wow,
Like,
that's
and sometimes I wonder, like, like I could have gone as well. Like, I don't know, like it could be someone totally different living here, just sitting on the seat or something.
yeah, wow.
But
Gotta thank your cousin.
yeah, I mean, in a way, yes. But like stuff happens. It's just timing, I guess. It's just how it is.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I don't know what to say. And the thing is, that's one story, and there's what, like how many like people died in Sri Lanka? I think around 35,000 at least. Obviously, always underreported because they can't find the bodies, right?
Yeah, I mean, like
Um,
that's like one story of like some of me of mine, that
exactly.
someone who wasn't even actually affected by it, but like had like these like, yeah, like you said, like secondhand experiences through other people and other incidents. And like that's what I mean, like it's such a big incident that happened. Like it's yeah.
It's just that panic as well. Like as soon as it happened, everyone's trying to call and check on your friends around the ocean, right? And then the thing is, like everyone in Sri Lanka is trying to call, and all the cellular networks just crash. So you can't text, you can't call, everything's gone. No communication, so you don't know if your friends are okay. Like you don't know what's going on. I think yeah, like people just trying to find if their loved ones are okay, but and I can't imagine how that might feel. Like imagine your child or husband's gone down, you know, to one of those areas for work or something, and you just don't know until maybe like a couple of days until they're kind of restored the all the networks. Um, it's kind of crazy. I think what really hit me as well, like this is like after, right? Maybe like years after. Every time you go down that road, you can still see the houses, right? Like it would be like just it would be houses, but only like one wall remaining, or like there'll be like just like yeah, like the roof or something. Like it just be random parts of houses. You can see like the foundation, but no house. Um, and people obviously like left flowers. So obviously, people who lived there have passed away, and like there's mass graves as well. Like when you go down that part, we're just covered with mass graves. And yeah, it was crazy because it's a constant reminder, because they never rebuilt it for like 3 4 years. I think people got so scared of the ocean. It's a very spiritual country, right? It's not like we didn't know what tsunami was until it happened. Everyone's like, oh, you know, everyone was so scared of it. I remember when it first happened, like when it was happening, the water sort of receded, right? And people were like, okay, what's going on? Like the water's going back, and then all the fishes and stuff there were just, like lying on the sand, I guess now, and the water's gone back. The water went back for like a kilometer or something. So people were just running and like taking fish, and on the kids are playing. It's such a bizarre event, right? And then little did they know, like a few minutes later, it's going to be a massive wave that's going to come through. All of those people got swept away. It's kind of crazy. It was just that no knowledge of when this happened. Like there hasn't been a big tsunami event happen like that in ages.
Eventually, like once it's done, like a few months later, you hear these stories about like people, even people like from school and stuff, who are like they're stuck inside this house, and the water is just like rising, and they can't get out
Mm.
because it's almost like a flood, but it's just increasing so much, like
Mm.
quickly, and you're just stuck in the house, and then it's just coming above your knees, and then like you don't know what the hell to do. And these are the houses that like that were like that stood still, like that weren't actually swept away, that were like less impacted by the actual wave. So it's crazy to like hear stories like that as well.
It was just, I remember, I think the most horrific story is the train incident. So for people who don't know, there was this train that was sort of, there was a train line next to the coast, and that had like, I think 1,700 people, at least. So paid tickets were, I think, 1,700. So I reckon there were up to 2,000 people on that train. And that was crazy because they couldn't stop the train in time, and it was they were basically being flooded. People couldn't get out because there was too many people. It was so packed, like fully packed, and then they were all just. So most people actually, I think some people got on top of the roof, right, of the train. They're like, okay, I'll be safe here. Some people just hid behind the train on the other side, and then they all got crushed just immediately, right?
The first thought that probably comes to your head is like, okay, I'll be safe behind this train, this massive train that probably won't get pushed down by like this wave, and then like all of those guys just just swept away, and that's just horrible to think about.
Yeah, all common sense is like gone out of the window because you're like any sort of common sense first response that you'll have wouldn't work in a tsunami. Hide behind this. It's like it was so powerful. Like like rail lines are so heavy. They're like just pure metal. They're so heavy, but they were all twisted, right? If you remember, like they were just twisted and like thrown like 100 meters off. Like the locomotive was like found in a swamp. They couldn't even find it for like so long. It's kind of crazy how powerful the water is.
We were talking about like how it affected the actual part of the city as well, and you can see like where it came inside the Mata bus depot as well, and you could see all these massive CTV buses just getting swept away as well.
Yeah.
Um, and like that was crazy.
They were like Lego. They were just
Yeah,
so all these
exactly,
buses, right?
exactly.
Yeah. These buses are, so people who don't know, these buses are red buses. So these are government kind of issued buses. And then they're all parked, nicely, but they're all just being swept away. It's like, hundreds of these red buses just being thrown around like they're Lego. Um, it's all these bizarre like things like that would never happen. Um, and you just see that on TV live, and they would just repeat the same footage for like 3 months. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah, like something when we talk about footage, like something that we should also talk about is like the stuff that wasn't documented. And during that time, we didn't really know what was going on in the East because
Yeah, because of the war. Yeah, it was being occupied by LTTE, so there was no sort of correspondence. I mean, some of the East, but I guess sort of Northeast was kind of, no one knew what was going on there.
and like you go a few years after the war, like directly after the war, and even like before, because sort of like the government side reclaimed the East a few years before the war actually finished. So people would still go visit to the East, and you go to the East, like even I did at the time, and then you see all the stories, and like you're like wondering, oh, this is a whole different life. It's like a whole different planet existed on this side, and like, they were affected by it as well, and you didn't see it back then, and then you see they've documented it. They've literally put photos of like what it was like before, and like the destruction, of course, like all that all those like well documented pieces of information there, and you're like, wow.
Yeah, it's kind of like if things aren't documented and if there's no one around to see it, it kind of didn't happen. You know what I mean? Like, because that almost feel like it didn't happen to that side, but in reality, the East is where the waves are like the strongest because the earthquake happened on the east side. So yeah, it's kind of crazy.
What's weird is like almost uh you see the same story happen in 2010, wasn't it? When the Japan tsunami happened, and that also was like this massive amount of destruction, and then you're literally like almost seeing flashbacks of it, and it was so unfortunate to see because like this is something that actually happened and something that people already had experience with, and you're still seeing people go through that, and like again that sense of helplessness and that sense of like confusion. um
Yeah, and that's yeah. So that was 2011.
2011. Okay, I
Um,
was
I
I was a year
I
off.
I had to like quickly Google.
Yeah, I'm
um,
sorry. Yeah, other than that.
you're wrong.
Oh
Yeah, you're
no.
wrong. No, but that's crazy. And I mean, Japan's, they have a lot of that happen, so they're properly sort of prepared for it. But even still, like that was like it was just too much. Like that magnitude of an earthquake, like you can't really prepare, and it like can't prepare, um, and it kind of makes you feel like a wish sort of Sri Lanka and all the Asian countries knew that back in the day, when it did happen in 2004, but it was not even in the conversation. Like I haven't heard of the word tsunami until it happened. Um, I remember being like super confused. Why is there a T in front of the S? Like, why is it tsunami? Like, why isn't it tsunami? Like, I'm trying to like pronounce it with the T. And I was like young. I had no idea what that meant. But yeah, and I think it never really hit me a lot until I think in year 12. So I'm in Australia in year 12, I think. I don't know, for some reason I was just on Wikipedia, it's going through the tsunami and then all these stories, and then I was watching these videos on YouTube, and that's when it really hit me, like how crazy it was. Um, and to go through that, I don't know, that kind of like that whole week, I was just kind of really down. Really, just it really hit me. I didn't realize I was carrying all that around. Yeah, like back to that point of secondhand smoking, carrying all that smoke around in me, right? Like I didn't realize that because I wasn't affected, but I didn't take it too seriously, and I was so young. But um, whatever, 10 years later, more than 10 years later, 14 years later, it just hits you, right? Out of nowhere. Um, but yeah, I think that's kind of the reason why we do this podcast, right? Bring these stories out, kind of a place. I think it's more for us as it is for the listeners. Um, it's a very therapeutic, cathartic experience to just to talk about these things.
Yeah, exactly. I'd agree as well. And yeah, I guess like hearing about that experience also like kind of put stuff into perspective. And yeah, it's almost crazy how like people were affected by it, and like and hearing like these different stories years later, or like even now, um it's crazy. And like um yeah, I think you told me about this a British photographer, um
Yeah.
Kira Doherty,
Mm.
who came by to cover the incident in 2004. um um he was working for Reuters, right? And yeah, and then there's this really nice episode where he talks about it.
Yeah, we should link that on the show notes as well. But it's kind of points to sort of the resolve and the spirit, right, of the people. I think people at that point have gone through so many things. They were like, okay, just it's another one of these things. Just pick up and get on with it, kind of mindset as well. Um, but that story is really beautiful, I think. So basically, so Kieran comes down with Reuters and he goes to, I think, one of the east sides, and he sees his local man, and he comes up to him, talks to him. He's like, can I get you a drink, whatever? And he's like, no, I'm fine. I'm totally fine. He's like, no, I can go grab you a drink, which is like a shop that's like a mile away. He's like, I'll quickly go run and bring like a Coke or something for you. He's like, no, I'm fine. So he's like, okay, just sit down. And he like points to this place, which is just, apparently it was a house, but there's only one wall remaining and just this small dresser. Um, so, and then it's like, okay, cool. And he just brings up a seat, like sits in this house with one wall. And the guy just climbs up a coconut tree that was next to it. Like, yeah, gets a coconut, comes down, um, breaks it open, puts a little straw in it. I don't know how he found it, puts a straw in it, gives it to him, right? And then, actually, no, before he did that, kind of did something really nice, which is he opens that dresser, right? There's the only thing in his house that's remaining, and there's one thing in the dresser, which is a silver platter. He gets that, puts the coconut on it, and hands it to this guy who's like never met in his life, right? And he's just a news reporter. Just hands it to him, and then obviously this Kieran guy is super like shocked and amazed at sort of this gesture. And then what he does is he's just, so they're talking a bit about what's happened and all that. And then the guy's like, yeah, my parents, my siblings, my wife, and my 6 kids all got swept away, and they all died. Obviously, bodies can't be found, and Kieran's just like, I'm here as a photographer from Reuters, trying to take photos, and this guy has lost everything he has. Only thing he has is a silver platter, and the first thing on his mind is, how can I make this foreigner feel at home, right? Um, it kind of points to the spirit of sort of the Lankan community, I think.
Yeah, man. It's like it also puts stuff into perspective, right? Like where this guy is like lost his whole family, but he still managed to put himself before put the happiness or like the comfort of someone else before his own. And yeah, that's just crazy to think about. Like, would you do that? Like, would you actually do that? You wouldn't, right? That's just something that.
I wouldn't. Yeah. It's just yeah. It's fine.
And like I was talking about how like when you go to different hotels like around the beach side of places where they were actually affected by it, they have these photos and of like mass destruction, and like they're just putting them up on the wall, just like, look at this, look what happened. And then you look around and you're like, they're completely rebuilt. It's like it's almost like they started rebuilding as soon as it happened, which they did, right? They did start rebuilding
Yeah,
as
yeah,
soon
yeah.
as it happened. And it's like it's crazy to understand the amount of spirit they had and the amount of like perseverance they had to come back from something so big when like, and literally like I also feel like at that point all you can do is like rebuild and um to
Hmm.
get back, like that's all you're thinking, we need to get back. And yeah, man, I'm super proud of like the people, everyone who was affected by it and managed to like come back and be where they are now.
That kind of speaks to sort of any kind of tough situation, right? It's tough mainly because I think you're kind of thinking about yourself, but as soon as you're thinking about someone else, all your worries kind of takes a back seat, right? You're worrying about this other person, and that kind of makes it easier to sort of deal with anything that's going on. Um, and it's kind of what yeah this guy was doing, right, with this photographer, and just all this crazy story. That's just one story. There's millions of these stories that well, we can talk about this forever, right? We could have a whole podcast dedicated to this. um but I think it was really good for me, I think, just to get these out as well. I know we've talked it among each other, but it's kind of good to get that documented, get it out into the world, share with the friends as well, I think.
Mm. Yeah, man, it's good talking about it. um it's crazy. It's just like over time like you do tend to forget about stuff like this, but then like there's a certain point of realization where like this should happen, and so many people were affected by it. And even now there are still people like who don't even know what happened to their family. Like they never even probably found a body, or they didn't even see where they even went. And that's that breaks your heart, and that like pain is almost, I don't know, it's something that you have to talk about, and you have to keep talking about for as much as you can, for like their sake, for the memory of the people who are no longer with us because of that, and the memory of the people who were affected so much by it.
Yeah, well
Yeah.
said, well said.
All right.
That was a bit heavy.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah,
how you
it's
doing?
all
Did you
right.
listen to the new Adele?
I know. I don't
Yeah.
listen to. I think last one I listened to is, what was that really memed song? Hello? Was it Hello?
Was it Rolling in the Deep? Because I remember like back
Rolling. Oh,
back
that was so good, man. I love that album.
I remember like come to your house and like something something, and just making like Rolling in the Deep jokes. Um, which is funny.
Oh yeah, that was the thing. Yeah,
Um,
it used to
but
be
yeah.
over at my place like very frequently.
Yeah,
I
yeah, I
think
think
my mom
so.
was telling a story where
Yeah.
I think my mom was telling a story where you kind of sort of came over, and then your mom's calling, ringing my mom up, like just make him come home, it's getting late. And then you sort of making my mum lie about you doing work or something
Yeah.
in my house so you could stay for longer. I think we were playing FIFA or something.
It wasn't even few. We were just hanging out, and like the two of us would just be like, yeah, just tell them something. Just say like, and we just
We were
eat.
podcasting
With
from
fucking
day
hell.
one.
We were literally like drinking Highland Kiri, Highland chocolate milk, the bottle, and
Bless.
then like literally
Bless.
just like chilling there. And then at one point, your mom did it like without us having to tell her. Like she literally just like she went like, oh yeah, I told her that it's like half an hour and stuff, which is pretty shitty of me, to be honest. But you know, like didn't have to keep my mom waiting like that.
Nah, it's
but you know, like I guess
yeah.
I was a kid.
Yeah.
Good times.
Great times.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I think we've dragged this out for a very long time. So thanks for anyone who's still listening.
Yeah. I mean, I know we said we'd get more people on the show, and we have got a lot of requests, and also we've reached out to a lot of people who are coming on the podcast in the next few weeks, and yeah, that's gonna be interesting. And we thought that the first episode could just be the two of us, where we do bring the memories of a few extraordinary people, the people of Sri Lanka as a collective. I think that was a bit fitting. Yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for listening, everyone. And we hope you have a good week. Until the next episode, take care, stay safe.
Ciao.
Ciao? Yeah, is that what we're going? Howdy and ciao.